I am so thrilled to have Magatte Wade, Van Jones, and Bishop Omar Jaweh joining us to talk about this incredibly important issue of how businesses can help change the school to prison pipeline to a school to career pipeline. Because fewer than 60% of Black males graduate from high school. According to the Sentencing Project, 32% are born in 2001 are likely to end up incarcerated at some point. So we should ask, how can conscious capitalists help shift this pipeline from school to prison to school to career? Today, we're going to dive into a wide-ranging, frank conversation on the challenges facing urban Black males and how to address those challenges constructively. This conversation is going to be led by Senegalese entrepreneur and a Conscious Capitalism board member, Magatte Wade, who will be speaking with Van Jones, the well-known CNN commentator and lifelong activist on criminal justice reform, and Bishop Omar Jaweh, founder of Heal America and Urban Specialists, an organization that has successfully reduced inner city violence by 90%. And it's going to conclude with some concrete ways that businesses can make a positive difference on this critical issue. For those who are joining this call for the first time, one of these virtual gatherings, I want to make sure you know that at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A box where at any point during this call, you can type in a question that we're going to check in on at about the halfway point and at the end of this hour-long session, where to curate questions and feed them to our panelists. So if you ever have a question, please type them in there. And with that, I want to give a little more introduction to Magatte Wade, because she really is an incredible woman who I've known for a long time, and I'm so thrilled to have lead this session today. She's a serial entrepreneur, an inspirational speaker, a visionary business leader with a passion for creating positive change in Africa and the world. She's the founder and CEO of Skin is Skin, the lip balm with a mission that's dedicated to reducing racial discrimination while creating jobs and prosperity in her home country of Senegal. Throughout her career, she has created successful high-end retail brands inspired by diverse African traditions. She's a Forbes 20 Youngest Power Women of Africa, a Young Global Leader by the World Economic Forum at Davos, a TED Global Africa Fellow, and Leading Woman in Wellness Award winner by the Global Wellness Summit. And it is an absolute honor and pleasure to have her on Conscious Capitalism's board now. Magatte, thank you so much for leading this.
Well, I thank you, Alexander, and thank you so very much to my guests, Van Jones and Bishop Omar. I love when I'm on, panels where I'm with my brothers, because these guys are my brothers, absolutely. Especially when we're talking about an issue that is so critical and center to Black people in America, especially our Black men. You have no idea how proud I am that for once, we are not seeing white people, coming and trying to tell us what we should do about this issue. This initiative is being led by two amazing men who have devoted their entire life, as far as I know it, to fighting this, and they're showing results. So it is exciting for me that the Conscious Capitalism community is, here to listen and learn from them today. So we're going to jump right in, because this is election times. Van is super busy, so I have to leave soon. So I want to make sure we hear we hear as much as he can say. So Van, first off, thank you so much for being with us. I have a question for you, and it is, what do you think are the leading reasons as to why Black males are not finishing schools? Why? What's going on?
Well, first of all, I'm really glad to be a part of the conversation. And I'm especially glad, the ability of innovators, entrepreneurs, investors to solve real problems at scale is unquestioned. And we now are in a situation, I think, where more people who have means and information, access, et cetera, are asking the question, what can I do? How can I get involved? And so it's a good time to have the conversation. What I would say is that it's a symptom. When you start seeing large numbers of African-American young men leaving school, either voluntarily pushed out or arrested and incarcerated out, those numbers, which are shocking numbers, are symptoms of deeper problems. Number one, psychologically, you can literally test teachers and see that their tolerance for African-American male, quote unquote, disobedience is almost zero. You've seen these psychological studies now where they'll take a teacher and they'll just show them a video of a bunch of kids playing. They'll say, which of these kids is a problem kid? And they can track the eyeball movement of the teachers, and they automatically look to the black student, the black male student, and any behavior that that student does, they zero in on. In other words, little Johnny throws an eraser across the room. Little Johnny is just being precocious. When Jamal throws an eraser across the room, he's being violent. And so you have from the very beginning a predisposition, which is measurable. This is data. This is not assumption. This is not black people are paranoid. If you can show from a data point of view that people come in with certain narratives and assumptions that black boys are going to be disrespectful, black boys are going to misbehave. It turns out if you just look at it from a computer point of view, all the kids are basically doing the same stuff. It's just there's a very low tolerance for African-American kids doing what kids do. Kids test boundaries. They don't obey all the rules. They try to figure out what they can get away with. But the punishment for African-American men is so severe. And I've seen it with my own sons. I have two boys, African-American boys. They're both bright. But we had to have a lot of conversations with teachers. Now my older boy, pre-Olympic soccer, 4.0, taking Mandarin and physics, but there was always this hyper focus on him as a little guy that we had to challenge. So first of all, there's that. Second of all, these kids are going to schools in disproportionately already overburdened and undersupported schools. The way that we fund schools in this country means that you don't get money based on the need, you get money based on how much wealth there is in your neighborhood. We fund schools by the neighborhoods. People want to live in a good neighborhood so they can have good schools. What does that mean? That means if you live in a bad neighborhood, you have a bad school, even if you're a good student. And a good student in a bad school is more likely to get in trouble, more likely to drop out. The third thing I'll say is that we just don't have the presence of enough people in some of the tougher schools, of business leaders, of people, I would say any conscious capitalist group, organization, corporation needs to adopt a couple of public schools and go on the campus and look around. The school is not what you think. Whatever school you went to, that's not the school that's available to most of these kids. You're talking about 30 kids in a classroom, 35 in a classroom, 6 books, sometimes no chalk, all the little video interactive stuff your kids are doing in private school. They're not doing that. And I think if more business leaders were on these, walking the halls, looking at what was going on, they would go down to City Hall themselves and champion. They would make donations themselves. They would grab holds of those struggling principals and help them. But I think you have a psychological thing. I think technology could be used to better track and monitor. I think you have a funding thing that political support could be useful for. And lastly, we don't live in a diverse society. We live in bubbles that touch. Just because you have a city that has a bunch of different racial groups in it doesn't mean it's diverse. Each little bubble, all sitting on its own bottom, means that you have no idea what's going on in your city. And as a business leader, you should know more.
Very, very on point. Bishop, what do you think? Do you agree with Van? Do you have any additional perspective to add to his question?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, and thank you for this Conscious Capital community. I think that he was totally on point. There's a failing system. There is a predisposition to believe that there is some mischievous activities that will lead to criminal ideas when it comes down to black men. But here's something else I do want to add, is that in order for a black man, a black boy to be a black man, he must see one. When you have a lack of educators that look like them, they find it hard to connect what they're learning to what they're doing and where they're going. Because when you trigger a survival instinct in your mind, you suspend the rules. And too often in challenged neighborhoods, we become unintentional survivalists. So math doesn't mean a whole lot unless you're trying to count what they're hitting for, or what, in your brain, you start going into a different science. And so your creativity becomes a way you pattern your daily activities rather than you project where you're going to be. I've worked with so many young people who are surprised if they get to be 18 or 21. And so their brain is saying, I have a short amount of time. So this seems like a pause rather than a cause. I'm just pausing at school so I can get my breath, regroup, give me some lunch, hook up, and then let me get back. So they can't traject. And it's funny, it always stuns and stunts them when I ask them, what if you survive? What you gonna do? Because most people say, bitch, I'm ready to die. I said, what if you don't? What if you live? What are we doing there? What's your plan B or your life plan? Because most of you will not die. But that's the kind of juxtaposition that I think is a narrative that we kind of overlook or just don't know how to address. And then what Van said was profound. Entrepreneur and business leaders should go in and see what it is, what's the environment like. See, I've been in so many schools, I can tell you what he said is accurate. It don't look like what you thought. It's a whole different idea. And if you get it, you'll start seeing the nuance, and it will be surprising to you how many actually make it. But that's what I would add to that. But I think he is totally right.
Thank you, Bishop. So Van, coming back to you, given all the many issues that we have in the realm of education, criminal justice, and the job market, what do you see to be the biggest priorities for change right now? And most importantly, you guys are right now talking to some of the most prominent conscious capitalists in the US, at least. Those are the CEOs who are listening to you right now. So this is our opportunity. What do you see our priorities for change, and also what do you recommend? What do you want from them? If we have marching orders for them, then what would it be?
Well, if you're a business leader, you have three kinds of capital. You have financial capital, you have political capital, because people take business leaders seriously. You also have what I would call innovation capital. You have the ability to think anew. And to get people to take you seriously. Bishop was talking about creativity. If you're a poor Black kid on the street corner being creative, you might go to prison. If you're a business leader being creative, you might get some new market share. So let's just walk through those three things. On the financial capital side, there's a lot of stuff that people are just not doing they could be doing and should be doing. So for instance, we often talk about the Black community in terms of our deficits. But we also have a lot of assets that need to be strengthened. There are Black banks, there are Black businesses, there are Black colleges, there are Black churches that are functional institutions, but often do not have access to capital and deal flow. So for instance, a Black bank is an FDIC insured bank. And they have a lower default rate than white banks because they're loaning into communities that they understand very well, but they don't have capital. What if you dedicated 10 to 20% of your money and put it in a Black bank? You will, listen, first of all, those banks are well run, there's a lower default rate. If the bank disappeared, FDIC would ensure you would get all your money back, but that capital would be sitting in the community helping to create, helping a barber or the owner of a car wash expand or get some new capital or open up a second thing. You're helping to build wealth without doing anything. Literally, you're just parking some of your money in a different bank. Why doesn't every conscious capital do that? Why shouldn't that be one of the benchmarks? Are you banking in ways that support community institutions and Black banks? Easy, and yet it's not done. Number two, on the deal flow question, you have tremendous entrepreneurs and creative people, but if you're honest with yourself, most of your opportunities, certainly it's true for me, did not come from what I knew, it came from who I knew. And I was very lucky, like Magatte, I was a young global leader. I was pulled into a lot of relationships. I live off those relationships to this day. I'm a very clever guy, but there are smarter people than I am in the neighborhood I grew up in, the town I came from. They just didn't have the hookup. They didn't have the right person. And if you look at your life, what job have you applied for? You haven't. You knew somebody who knew somebody. What contract did you get or give by going on some app? You know people. Bringing people into your circle, finding people that you feel comfortable getting to know, doing business. That first contract is the hardest contract to get. So there's deal flow, there's where you park your capital, And obviously the hiring has been discussed, quite a bit. That's very important, who you put on your board, who your advisors, all that sort of stuff. Assume that you are wasting genius by only pulling off of a small group. If I told you I'm going to change the world with my company, but I'm only going to hire straight Black dudes, you would say you're probably going to fail. There's just not enough straight Black dudes in the world for you to win that by yourself. And yet, when people, everybody in my life is a bunch of straight white dudes and a couple of white women, we're going to win. People go, yeah, that's plausible. That's ridiculous. It's just as flawed. You're leaving a lot of genius on the table. You're leaving a lot of opportunity on the table. That's number one. Number two, political capital. We need to make some changes, especially in the criminal justice system. I went to Yale. I saw more kids doing drugs at Yale, engaging in aberrant behavior at Yale than I ever saw in a housing project, but they were considered to be experimenting with drugs. The kids in the housing project were drug pushers. Same activity. One's experimenting, needs to go to recovery, needs to go to rehab. The other is pushing drugs, needs to go to prison. We need to have business leaders stand up and say, cut the crap. I've seen more drugs at the country club, the yacht club, and with people I do golf with than these kids are doing. And none of my friends are going to prison. These kids shouldn't go to prison either. Let's give them real opportunity. When the business community says it, it has weight. And the last thing I'll say is we need some innovation capital. You guys can solve any problem in the world. You're trying to, eliminate global warming, and some people trying to go to Mars, and you can't figure out a way at this point for us to have schools that work for kids or a real pathway to mentorship and opportunity. I believe that if we have authentic partnership, I'm not talking about pity. I don't want pity, because I know the genius that's being wasted. I know the creativity that's being wasted. I know the resilience that's being wasted. I know the assets that exist in our community. No pressure, no diamonds. No pressure, no diamonds. We have communities full of diamonds. But if we could have partnership, not pity, but partnership, when we're bringing our cultural competency to the table, we're bringing our spiritual, soulful stuff to the table, our creativity, our resilience to the table, and you're bringing what you bring to the table, often in the form of financial capital and access. And now it's an authentic partnership. You're benefiting and we're benefiting. You're getting more cool, we're getting more cash. You're getting more, market access on both sides is getting stronger. There is a way out, but we need you to use your financial capital, your political capital, and your innovation capital to begin to change the situation.
That's a lot to work with. Thank you so much. So we're going to now open it up to questions from the audience. Alexander, do you want to give us some questions, please?
There was so much in there. And let's start with a question from Glenn, who wants to just ask a basic question. In terms of supporting Black-owned businesses, is there a resource I can go to that identifies those in my community?
Van?
I would say Google is a powerful tool, brother. I mean, I don't know what your community is, or Bishop. When people ask you, for help and guidance on some of these questions, I mean, how do you? That's a very important question for Glenn. If it's just too broad for me to know the best way to answer. So, what do you think, Bishop?
I think the research comes from where your heart is. What is driving you in your business acumen? I bet there is an alternative that's urban, that is creative, that's urban. So what's your business? What's your business? The guy who says, I do a car dealership, I bet it's a guy right now that's selling cars in the hood that's doing it through taxes. And I bet there's a restaurant, if you're a restaurateur, that is urban, that's based in someone's community. But like Van said, use your search engines, but also you got to tune in to the cultural norms. You have to kind of stretch, just like all other entrepreneurs. You got to stretch to find it. And let me just say this. I love that statement that we are leaving a whole lot of genius on the table. He is absolutely right. Please understand that. If you miss everything he said, please understand that is true. And your desire to grow has to be from your desire to partner and not pity. I like that. But anyway, I'll let you go ahead, Alexander. I'm sorry. You got me thinking.
Alexander, next question.
This is great. So Sabine has a question about educational reform that you've talked about. On the one hand, what do you think good educational policy changes would be? And can you say a little bit more about how businesses can work with public schools that you mentioned in order to support this pipeline of school to career?
Look, I don't want to weigh in on the whole charter school, private school, that sort of stuff. I mean, for me, I have found good and bad, all kinds of schools, private, public, charter, whatever. I'm open to innovation that doesn't leave kids behind. I don't like innovation where it's like some kids get out and other kids are left worse off. So you have some, it's like, oh, we're going to give you a voucher, but everybody can't go to the good school. So some kids can flee into a better school and the majority of kids get left behind in even crappier schools with less money. I'm not for that. I've seen some charter schools though that have been very impressive, that have been very exciting. But I will say there is this tendency, and I see other questions too, to say, well, let me deal with your families suck. Why don't you guys make your families better? And then why don't we have some charter schools and then everything will be fine? Listen, I'm going to be very, very clear. If you really want to solve this problem or help solve this problem, it's much more complex than that. People say, well, how come your families, you'll just fix your families? Well, hold on a second. If my child walks out the front door, looks both ways and pulls out a joint and the lights start flashing and my kid then gets a 4-year prison sentence and your kid doesn't even get arrested, then I got problems with my family structure that are being delivered to me by a system of injustice. And whenever I say I went to Yale, I saw more drugs at Yale than a housing project, nobody tells me I'm wrong. Nobody says, Van, you're lying. We know what's going on at these country clubs, yacht clubs, these white fraternities. We know the aberrant behavior. We know the criminal activity, but we don't label it that in our mind. Oh, well, boys will be boys, they're being precocious. So if you had a 1 strike and you're out policy for your family, and I had a 10 strikes and you're out policy for my family, you couldn't then listen to me point to the scoreboard and say, how come my family's doing so much better than your family? Get your family together. There is more going on to it. If it were that simple, that is a form of I would say, white cultural arrogance. I never say racism because people get upset. But it's a form of white cultural arrogance to imagine that Black people just forgot to have better families. We just kind of forgot. Oh shit, we should have better families. I'm so glad God damn it, why didn't we think of that? Thank you. That's ridiculous. Like, if you see this many families failing, you might assume there's something more going on than just people forgetting to have good families. If you see this many schools, this many students failing, you might think there's something else going on than they just forgot to do well in school. So you have some structural issues here, especially in terms of how aggressively educational institutions and policing institutions respond to any Black deviance. Deviance is the normal thing. There's no such thing as everybody being here. It's a bell curve. If on your bell curve, you can go all the way over almost off the page before you ever see a police officer, and I can't move 1 bit off the mean before I'm in court, I'm not on a level playing field. That's what we call structural racism, systemic racism, and it's driven by a certain what I will call just white cultural arrogance about what's going on. You don't love your children any more than I love my children. You don't want anything better for your neighborhood than I want for my neighborhood. Trust me. But when you see us not being able to do it, you either believe that we're inferior culturally or genetically, or you believe there's something wrong with the system. And if you believe there's something wrong with the system, partner with us to fix it. But if you still are under the impression somehow that Black people just, I don't know, like having all of our Black men in prison, or just haven't thought of a better outcome for ourselves and need you to remind us that maybe we should have more people in college, you're not being helpful, but you are giving yourself the psychological relief of not having to be a part of the tougher solutions.
Do we have maybe time for a couple more questions before Van has to leave us?
Thank you. So Teresa has a question about DEI programs. There's a lot of discussion about them today, about businesses should adopt them. There's some people who say that they shouldn't at this point. What are your thoughts on just how businesses should be thinking about DEI programming in their companies today?
You mean like diversity and inclusion?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion, yeah.
Well, look, because I'm on a tighter timeline than the bishop, I will let this be my last answer, and I'll let the bishop take it from there. I told him I was going to be his warm-up act, so I appreciate the opportunity. But what I will say is this: it's important that we have these programs. We're now at a point where I think we have to ask, what is the purpose of the program?
Yes.
If the purpose of the program is guilt, I'm white, I feel like maybe I haven't done enough, I want to not feel like I'm a racist, or not be accused of being a racist, or not be sued for being a racist, I need to kind of check some of these boxes and make sure that we are doing certain things. That is better than nothing, but not much better than nothing. And it could also lead to a negative, because people can tell if it's just the same old bullshit workshop we have to do every year, and people know it's not going to change. It's just everybody has to sit here and feel uncomfortable and look constipated and hope they don't get in trouble for an hour and a half, and then we'll do it again next year. Mm-hmm. That is getting tired. So if it's a different intention, if you're sitting here saying, I'm looking at a Magatte Wade, and I don't know how she does what she does. I don't know how she's being so successful. I don't know how she has the network that she has. I don't know how she can be so patient with me and so effective with so many different kind of people. I'm missing out on some opportunity here that I desperately want. I'm looking at a world where I'm gonna have to deal with 1 billion Chinese people, 1 billion Indians, 1 billion Africans. That's just off the bat, before I'm even dealing with the diversity of Los Angeles or Chicago or New York. I don't have the skills to do that. I don't have the mindset of empathy that would allow me to do what I see Magatte doing, code switching and able to deal with so many different kind of things. I'm jealous of Magatte. I want to learn from Magatte. I don't have the skill set of a Magatte to be able to speak powerfully and listen powerfully, to come up with new solutions and partner effectively across difference. I can't partner across difference. I'm defective, and I want to win. I want more money for myself. I'm a white guy. I want more money for myself. I want more contracts for myself. I want more cool stuff, more cool toys for me, and I can't get what I want without Magatte. Now you can set up a program where it's mutually respectful. We're learning together. Why? Because we're both trying to win. A win-win authentic partnership is the goal. If I know that this is going to give me a mindset of empathy I didn't have before, a skill set of listening I didn't have before, access to markets I didn't have before, and talent, I'm going to show up differently. And if I never can get in a business deal with Magatte, if I can never get her on my board, if I can never hire her, if I never see a Magatte again, I'm going to be a better person. I'm going to be the best father ever, because now I got empathy and I can listen. I'm going to be the best spouse ever. I'm going to be the best neighbor ever. I'm going to be the best. I'm going to get more contracts with white folk because I've got skills and mindset and ability and network they don't have. This is a benefit for me. I want white folk to be greedy and selfish. I want no pity. I want you to be greedy and selfish. Like, the only way for me to win in the new century is I've got to be able to get better at partnering across difference for win-win solutions. If it's a partnership across difference for win-win solution conversation, count me and Magatte and the bishop in. If it's I don't want to get blown up on Twitter and called a racist, so I got to do this workshop, I say do it, just because whoever the sister is doing the workshop needs the money. But otherwise, it's tired. So I hope I didn't offend nobody. If I offended you, just tell Magatte, don't bring nobody like Van on here anymore. But Magatte is the truth, and you're lucky to have her, and we're lucky to have Bishop as well. So I'll go, and I hope that wasn't too offensive. I'll talk to you guys later.
Thank you so much, Van. I really appreciate you. Thanks.
Okay, bye.
Oh my goodness. Bishop, now on to you, my friend. And we are way too familiar with this setup. Bishop, are you on?
I am.
All right. So for those of you who don't know, Bishop and I, we have actually a show that is dropping today. I'm doing some, selfless, English is not my fourth language, so I don't know if it's the right word or not, but
It's
we
close.
are dropping a show today called Catch a Drip. The first episode is next Monday. And then after that, we're going to have a podcast called Black Culture Matters. I'm sure you're wondering what it's all about, but we'll tell you more. In any case, Bishop, now on to you. I would like, I know everything, I know you by now so well, so I'm not going to spoil the well though. I am going to try to have you tell the people around this room who it is that you are and what is it that you do, especially when we're talking about this issue of Black males not finishing high school and most of them ending up in prison at some point. I would like for you to really walk us through some realities that I am sure that a lot of people in this room have probably no idea of. So walk us into maybe one of your most mind-marking intervention, if I can call it that way.
Yeah, well, I was the first gang specialist hired by the state of Texas. And what I did for years, I would negotiate peace agreements in prisons. And then I would furlough those prisoners to neighborhoods and use those influencers, those OGs, the guys who ran the prison gangs and guys
OG stands for Original Gangsters.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to be an OG myself these days.
That's right. That's right. Magatte is an OG. Magatte is OG. But yeah, we did that for I've been doing this for 28 years now, actually. And so with the idea that there is a way to catalyze individuals from the highest point of influence rather than the least common denominator. So with these influences, I would say you have a market advantage, but you have a character disadvantage. Allow me to shape who you are, and then let me show you the value of what you do. In other words, people are getting millions of dollars studying you, locking you up, doing all kinds of stuff, and you getting shot being you. The only person who does not value you is you. So let me show you how much of an advantage you have in the culture that needs your ideas. And let me just say something too. Further back, I was listening to the education conversation. See, there are three reasons that statistically that an individual stays connected to the bottom realm and uses violence as their language, and that's normally economic stress, a lack of education, a lack of mentorship. And so when you have that kind of vortex, it produces a humanity subculture that goes into what I was talking about, survival mode, like on Maslow's hierarchy. And so we've been doing this for years. And, I've seen guys, Anton Lucky, who was the founder of the Blood Gangs in Dallas. He now goes around the world training people, He trains police officers. He has went around the world with me. We have something called OGU, which is, like she said, Original Gangsters United. And basically we say that we can take your ideas that have been treacherous and cause you to transform into an ambassador of peace once your heart sees the ability of and the civility in your survival and how we can actually move the needle from just being okay to really advancing. And with the school to prison pipeline, I cannot tell you, because we've worked in schools for many years. And I cannot tell you how many brilliant individuals that I've seen operate in marginalized environments, compromised environments, low expectation environments, penalized environments, and they've lost the trust in themselves. So they see themselves as a product of, and you cannot allow that to be normalized. You have to challenge it at its core. And so what we say is you have to become extremely intrusive. That's why I was agreeing with Van what he said to the business leaders that's on this conscious capitalism. And I've been studying you guys too since Magatte told me about it. I've been seeing you guys' ideas and your thoughts, and I like it. I like the idea of saying that the bottom line is not investment and advancement of financial wherewithal. I love that. I saw the TED talk when he was talking about the peacock, when the tail is growing, but the tail only says what's the profitability, but it does not say is the person whole. See, if you get intrusive enough, you can't do drive-by analysis of this stuff. You got to get very close so you can see the difference, and you can see in the eyes of a young person. Magatte and Michael, they came to my building. We was doing a catch the drip. And it was about 25 or 30 young people that were there waiting to see the the deal we had with a hip hop guy. And I was not there. When I came, Magatte had done a whole session with these young people. She told me, Bishop, we got to start a school, of which we're actually doing. And so, because she said, what I saw was a generation that was starving for the next wave of their truth. They had not become damaged to the point where they didn't believe anymore. And that's what I think people miss, that you have a group of folks inside those schools who don't know they're not supposed to be great or genius. They have, the human spirit has to be beat down to that level of acceptability. And once it gets beat down, that's why it turns bitter and frustrated. That's why they become treacherous in their own survival, because the beauty of being young is the ability to dream and to vision. And when you cut that off, you almost say, I have the energy and the vitality of a young person, but I have the mentality of someone who is incarcerated or imprisoned by my own thoughts. So, you know, and I know I kind of gave you a whole lot, but I just wanted to show you my perspective, because, man, I have done this so long, and I never get used to it. So many young people that I love, I've had to eulogize. People that I love truly, I've had to tell their mother, you ain't gonna see them anymore. So many great guys that I know have the ability to change the world. Now they can only change a prison yard because they made that, they went on and hit the eject button and said, it's too hard for me to go through this cycle of disappointment. And so any person that, any group who is designed to help solve this are conscious capitalists and business leaders. You are designed for something like this because you understand value, but you understand individual value and civility. So I'll stop right there.
No, that's really great, Bishop. One of the reasons why I have loved working with you so much is because I know that earlier Van was telling us about how, you know, he takes offense, you know, when people talk about, you got to change the, you know, the families from, and he's saying, well, no, it's the external world. For me, I agreed with him when he said things are complicated. Yes, they're complicated in the sense that I do think there are external factors, and there are also factors that are, you know, specific to our own culture. In this case, I'm talking about the Black urban culture. So while Van is working on the external factors mostly, what I love about you is that you are working on the factors that are internal to the community and to the culture. I absolutely love when you say, no matter what happened to you, you're responsible for what you do for you. And so to me, that is big deal. And so you're not, your work is not focused on what the world is supposedly doing to the Black community, but you're thinking about how can we reform ourselves from within. And that, I think, is powerful work. So Bishop, how would you say, if you have, Bishop is based in Dallas. Obviously they go all around the world and they fix, you know, they fix communities neighborhood by neighborhood. But Bishop, you're in Dallas. If we have any CEOs on the room right now who are based in Dallas and or have major operations in Dallas, what would you say to those folks as to how they can right now be part of a solution along the lines of what you do?
Yeah.
And it can be as wild as you want, because I think respect for conscious capitalism that respect himself or herself should always think big.
You have no problem with me there. I believe that, you know, one of the things that you can do is connect with our movement. You know, we have something called Heal America, which is a movement that we're promoting now that says there is a way to change individuals and systems. We have something called OGU movement, OG as in girl, you movement.org. You can go on there and you can see that we, every 21 days, we're bringing out young, vibrant individuals who want to change the world, and they've been through some things. So these OGs, these people who have some scars, they still want to be in the battle. And so what can we do with this budding group of entrepreneurs or these people who want systemic change without tearing down the system? We don't want chaos, we want community, we want truth. And so what can you do? Well, you can partner with us. I love, as Van said, we don't have to pivot, let's partner. Let's say, okay, Bishop, what are we doing? Do we have some entrepreneurs in an area and we can put up a fund to help them catalyze at the highest level of their ability? Let's put that together. I mean, the Cuban Foundation, for example, they said, okay, we're going
to, with whom you work.
yeah, Mark Cuban and AT&T, they said, well, Bishop, why don't we try to do 4 neighborhoods where they can apply the pressure of their influence to stop violence? This is just one iteration. And they put up $250,000 for 90 days to get these OGs a chance to actually do what they do, be paid for what they do, and then see if that investment can grow a return in lives and in stability in community. And it's going to do it because I know what happens when you unleash those possibilities. Well, that's just one iteration. But some of these guys have apparel companies. Some of these guys have, and Guy, I'm not talking about gender specific. They have all kinds of ways that they believe because they're entrepreneurial. And they've just been using the product that they have. There are ways that we can set up a business consortium that says, what is it that is needed in the highest populated areas in most cities, which are the urban areas, but they're probably the least developed. What if this group could be the catalyst to change those morbid stats into true economic stimulus? Could do it. You know, what if we figured out how to create mentorship through business connections that says, how far do you want to go? I got a friend in Dallas, Jack Matthews, who is who has Matthews Southwest, $1 billion development company. We are developing 50 houses in Dallas that are developed by these OGs. We have a complex that we're doing. So we're doing a lot of things to say, how do we figure out how to get the greatest bang for the buck for these who others have written off. And then if you want to be in the movement, like I said, go to healamericatour.com and say, Bishop, we want to sponsor that, because we're going all around the nation and saying that there is a racial animus that is very palatable right now. And we can't keep this us versus them narrative alive, or it will destroy the union. You cannot have Black citizenry at this level, but it can't just be Black complaints. It has to be a solutions-based ideology, and that's what we are. So maybe you want to partner with that. So there are ways, you know, connect with us and get with Magatte and say, okay, Magatte, I want to give a Bishop, let's go, let's do something.
No, Heal America for anybody. All the programs of Bishop are amazing programs, and you can see how some of them are very much like, you know, on the ground, like when they're building this complex in Dallas. But going back to Heal America, it's a crazy program. The first one I went to, it was in Dallas, and Bishop has assembled on stage a cast of characters. I have no other word for it. A cast of characters that, sincerely, if you had seen these people anywhere else in the world this close to each other, it's because probably they're going at it with each other, probably strangling each other around. And we're talking about, you know, Ted Cruz sitting right there with some Democratic senator, or clearly they hated
Bernice Johnson.
Yeah, they hated each other normally. You had these rappers, you had this gentleman who's the one who raised his fist at, you know, the Olympic Games. I mean, a cast of characters, but the NFL players, all types of folks, and there was a lot of anger from all sides, but they come together and they're all focused on solution for once in their lives, regardless of who is in front of them. That's magical. And then these people connect behind the scene and they make real progress happen. This is just mind-blowing. And I feel like we should be hearing more about the work that Bishop does. And I'm blown away by this. You know, while there's all this noise, this anger out there, Bishop is over there with peace, love, compassion, yet real tools, concrete tools. He's just making strides. So this is a world you can be part of, especially if, like me, you have gotten tired of all the mess out there. This is a place we come and we make things happen. So I wanted to open it up right now to questions for Bishop. Alexander, is there any questions you would like?
We do have questions rolling in. So,
okay.
So Bishop, thank you again for speaking with us. Heather has a question. Do you use a balanced scorecard or associated KPIs to drive towards desired outcomes, such as lower crime rates, increased homeownership, and so forth? And if so, how do you structure that?
Yes, great question. We do. We use the measurables appropriate to whatever the initiative that we're doing. So, for example, if we're doing a crime initiative like we're doing these 90 days, we are comparing the stats from where they are trending and where they were previous. And so we have proposed that in this 90-day time that there will be less murders, that violence will be down, citizenship will be up, blah, blah, blah. So we have those KPIs. With our Heal America, we talk about citizenry from who's all in and who's all out. So we're trying to make this a really very easy product to understand. So when you're coming, do you believe that America can get better? Are you inspired to be a part of it? And then those efforts that we push out, like we're going to do something on residential-based education. We're going to talk about ending the drug war. We're going to, we're dealing with overcriminalization. We're talking about violence and poverty, eliminating those things. So we will have some structural things that are very specific that will drive us to say, if we are successful, then this, and it will be very objective based, not just kind of fanciful. So that's why we say, so we have one part of our product that's about how we feel, but then we really get it down to the action base, what we're going to do. And then when we can be held accountable by that kind of scorecard. Thank you. That was a great question.
Thank you. And this goes, I think, both to you, Bishop, and you, Magatte, but what's the best way for business leaders to connect with this movement? Beyond visiting the website, but beyond just filling out an online form, what can they do, especially if they're able to talk to decision makers and get others involved? How can other business leaders really be a part of this?
Bishop, you just need to tell them how to get a hold of you. And I appreciate that question. Someone is basically saying, we want to go straight to the decision makers. In this case, it's you. Bishop, do you want to tell them how to get a hold of you? Please?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go, first email me at Pastor O at urbanspecialist.org, Pastor O at urbanspecialist.org. You can, of course, like I said, if you get on their website, you'll see some CTAs that we have some call to actions that are very specific. Our platform will be published September 30th because our next Heal America is Chicago, September 30th. And we'll have our platform on our Heal America site, and you'll see exactly what we're doing and can follow the movement. But you can get with me and we can talk about some specific things that we're going to do if you want us to come to a city that you're in, and then how do these things fall out? What can we do like specific to your region, to your area? Because we are saying this, and Alexander, this is how I see this. This is the culmination of the civil rights movement. This is the next phase. We're trying to get with Andrew Young, Ambassador Young, who is saying that he will be a part of this, and others like Magatte, who has been wonderful. And to say to us, what can we want to finish the civil rights movement. We don't want to just complain. And so we have the depth and the height to do it. So we are all in with everyone. It's not vitriolic, but it is serious. It does do real examination, but we will have things that are very specific. So that's how.
And for all because we know we are with a business community, there's just one thing that I want for people around this room also to know. You do with it whatever you want, but I think it will help you think about Bishop further deep. Something that marked me. I don't know if you guys remembered back in July 2016, when we were having all the, the shootings of the Black people by the police. And then, then eventually in the 9th precinct in Dallas, a Black shooter decided to go on a killing rampage against white cops, especially, and five of them died. You probably remember that we didn't hear much more afterwards. And the man we owe that to is sitting right in front of you. Bishop Omar, when the country was at that height in terms of polarization and everything was going wild and people were just, it is a time in my life where I personally felt like I'd made my choice. I was going to side with the Black people, terrible, terrible violence is never a good way to go, but it was so intense. I am confessing that even it was very hard, but so Bishop behind the scene, no one knew about this. What he did is he picked all the players in the community and he brought them to the table. We're talking here about the police community. He brought in the gangs community together, as well as the business communities, and all types of other communities and brought them at the table. And they spoke and they made peace and we could move on. If Bishop did not do what he did, I don't know, and stopped it, nipped it in the bud when he did, I'm not sure where we would be today, because who else was going to emulate what happened over there? And how was the rest of the country going to react to this? So this is just, you know, sometimes we see huge issues, but we tend to not see those working on solutions and in a very profound way. And he's just one of those men. So I think it's important. It is important for me. I say this to everyone because for me, it just defines Bishop in my mind and the work that they do. So your business people, I'm sure you see a lot in your respective communities. Don't be deterred by it. Don't, you know, turn your face the other way. There are solutions. This can be done. We can all come together. We can build this better world. And that's what he's doing day in and day out. Maybe we have time for a couple more questions.
So we're coming close to the end, but I think we have time for at least one more. And Richard asks, you've been talking about Dallas a lot, and you just said that you're willing to work with business leaders in their regions, but are there any other cities that are really adopting this and are at the forefront right now that are good examples to look to?
Yes, we thank you, Richard. We are in Atlanta. We're in Baton Rouge. We've been in Detroit. We were in Minneapolis. We we'll be in Chicago September 30th. We're going to Little Rock, Memphis, Los Angeles, and Miami. So yeah, we for us, this is a national and really an international idea, but no, it's not confined. Dallas is just my home and where we have based our efforts around. But we've literally traveled every state in the union, and we've been to Russia and Mexico, and they were trying to bring this idea to bear that there's a way that we can find common solutions, especially in the area of violence and attack, and then how we get into some of these higher ideals. So we've been doing it for a while around the country.
And you have networks, Bishop, in those countries, like in Louisiana.
Yeah.
You know, all my brothers that I'm meeting, you know, you have networks everywhere. I feel safe everywhere I go because I know that.
Yeah, you can't miss me. Anywhere you go, we good. We good. I promise you, we got it.
And actually, if you have time for one more question, Isabella is a great one for us to wrap up with. What would you two say to people who see capitalism as a hindrance to progress? Are there any books? Is there any reading? Is there anything that you could offer to provide a different perspective to that?
You want to go? You want to start this, Magatte?
You know, I'm going to be polite today. Everybody knows how I feel about capitalism. So, Bishop, why don't you just say, I will give you a chance to speak because I'm afraid if I get going, we're going to forget about you. So you go, please.
Well, let me say this, that mutual benefit, value-added mutual benefit is a part of the DNA of the community that we're in. That capitalism in and of itself as an idea is not an idea that should be thrown away, because we have people who are not principle-based entrepreneurs, and those kinds of ideas have been at the core of some of the misguidance. But I don't think that we should be misguided by the idea. So you got to purify the idea to get the best out of it, not throw it away, because I don't believe that there's another economic system that brings to bear talent, gifts, and medium of exchange like capitalism when done right. But of course, anything done abusively will create an abusive outcome. So I believe in capitalism. I believe in an economic system that rewards hard work. But I just believe that there's a social dynamic that used to be a part of the spiritual pact with individuals. You know, a man word is his bond, and that's not gender, Magatte, so don't get mad. I'm saying a person's word is their bond. All of those things, I think that we have to create those inferences by being conscious enough. You know, I saw your TED, as I referenced earlier, I saw the TED talk that you guys did, and it was great because it showed certain companies like Google and others that were saying there is a way to be a capitalist, but have a consciousness about how we approach the bottom line. And the bottom line is greater good, not just greater profit. A whole person and a whole system, not just a whole lot of money. So that's how you have to look at this, and that's intentional but it's doable. Especially one last thing, when the ecosphere is set by the right leadership. You got to have leaders who think like this, who believe like this, in order for this to actually work. But that's what I think.
Yes. So books that we could recommend. I think that one of the first books that comes to my mind is, and it is highly, highly, you know, maybe I'm being very subjective because of the man, the main writer behind it, but it's, I would encourage everybody to read Be the Solution, How Entrepreneurs and Conscious Capitalists Can Solve All the World Problems. Because for us conscious capitalists, it's not just about running a good, sound, conscious business. We get involved in the businesses we get involved in because we want to change the world. We want to make the world a better place, and we do not want to have to wait for others to believe in it to do it. So to me, that's what conscious capitalism is. We have to defend capitalism. We have to defend capitalism. Sorry for the noise behind me here. It is, so that book, and then there's another one also called, is it called Conscious Business? Alexander, which one, is it called Conscious Business? The one that John Mackey wrote together with Rashi Sodia? That one is a great book as well.
Conscious Capitalism, actually.
Yeah,
great recommendation.
Conscious Capitalism. Yeah, so I would encourage people to really read all of those books. At the end of the day, I remain convinced that capitalism is the greatest source of force of good in the world. And as conscious capitalists, we believe in the stakeholder model. Obviously not the way that the philosophers conceive it, but the way we conceive it is before a conscious capitalist makes any decision, he or she has to think about the win-win-win-win-win relationship between the company itself, its employees, its suppliers, the community in which it involves, the environment itself, as well as, yes, the shareholders. And if it is not a win-win-win-win-win between all of those stakeholders, then the decision probably is a no-go. And so if you take those things into account, please tell me what can go wrong. And so I am a staunch defender of capitalism, conscious capitalism especially. And I think that for the longest time, especially Black people around the world have been sold really, really detrimental ideas and it's been bad for us. Capitalism, conscious capitalism is our friend. We need to make that clear. And if you need to educate yourself, go read those books. And I think you're going to come back with a very different mindset.
Magatte, Bishop, thank you so much for giving us so much of your time today and sharing your wisdom with the community.